Deviant ranting community, wanna feel old? Deviant Cringe. Really, what more can be said? Anyone in the DeviantArt ranting community knows this guy. They've most likely seen his videos, and maybe even thought about making their own video on him. That is, until his channel stopped making videos about DeviantArt users altogether. To be fair with my audience, they may have never heard of this guy, since the closest I've ever gotten to the DeviantArt community is a collab or two. To give some context, the name of Deviant Cringe has rung infamous for the simple reason that he made content that got tons and tons of views. Then he stopped doing what he was known for, and he almost immediately fell right back down the cultural rabbit hole into obscurity. To be blunt, the man should have never been popular like he did. Everything was against him. Quality, improvement, society's attempts to show the general public the best content that can be offered, likability, memorability, and yet he thrived for multiple years. I have to wonder if that says more about society or how little it takes to entertain us. In the DA community, at one point, he was up there with the big boys like Spoctor, Solar Sands, and other users, but now look at him. Taking a glance at Deviant Cringe's channel page is kind of depressing in a way. Seeing a guy who rose through the ranks so high and now barely makes a few hundred views per video despite having over 116k subscribers just sort of gets to any YouTuber. He's a prime example of why you can't turn out the same shit day in and day out and expect to continue to grow at a healthy rate. Could he have seen this coming? I'm almost certain that he did, but even so, he decided to try and change his fate right as his car was already barreling down a sharp cliff to a watery grave. How we got to the point he is now is the reason for this video now, isn't it? I don't think you clicked on this video for me to gush about the horrid community who couldn't understand the brilliance that was Deviant Cringe. Sorry all 5 of you Deviant Cringe fans, but I must speak the truth. This is the unfortunate rise, fall, and even deeper fall of Deviant Cringe. You're welcome, America. The things I do for you people. Just kidding, I really wanted to make this video for a while. Deviant Cringe is a user who's been around a little over 3 years. I can't trace back exactly when he made his first videos since his original channel got hacked and deleted, but the oldest video on his channel recently turned 3 years old, so that's when I'm gonna say he started his rise. Deviant Cringe started out a simple channel. He would look at DeviantArt drawings and say how cringe they are. I don't like saying the C word unless it's necessary, but alas, in this case, it is. When it comes to DeviantArt, it's known for a few things on the internet. Having artists under the age of 13 posting art from Microsoft Paint, the art of the front page always having Sonic somewhere on there, and also for being, as the cool kids like to put it, cringy. Many a fetish can be found on DA, some of the weirdest, decrepit, well, deviant art you can find. Sonic is pretty popular there, like I mentioned before, but you don't want to know some of the art related to Sonic. I guarantee you will regret it and wish it was never in your life to begin with. That's what Deviant Cringe feeds on. He looks at everything that could possibly be made fun of. All the terrible artwork from young kids using bases to tell fanfiction stories. And then he just kind of makes fun of it. I've said it before, but I find making fun of dumb shit children under 13 made, more specifically focusing entire videos around them, is just kinda rather low-hanging fruit. I'm fine making fun of something like Lightbringer because it was made by a fully grown man who thought he could tell an epic story with horrible art, but I don't see any reason to make fun of really young children who aren't really even worth making fun of. I'm also fine doing meme shit and like making fun of children who curse out adults in Call of Duty or try and cover up that they're watching hentai to their parents, like just the meme kind of shit, but making an entire call-out video where you call him a tracer for using bases is kind of unnecessary. It's just so easy to say that something a child made was terrible because it usually is. People aren't going to disagree with you on the statement because the art is almost always really bad, but people who focus the majority of their content around looking at that art aren't going to have anything actually funny to say, but rather the same regurgitated garbage everyone says when they look back on stuff they did as a kid. Man, I can't believe that was so terrible. How could anyone think to do that when they were so young? This kid must have been pretty stupid. That's all I can hear whenever I watch a Deviant Cringe video. If you're gonna make fun of children because it's so easy, the least you could do is try and actually be funny. His monotonous voice makes me want to tear my ears out after 5 minutes since there's no music, no good commentary, just a man looking and pointing at something some 9-year-old made. At least when Mr. Mediker did it, he was doing it entirely for laughs and fun. This feels so so unentertaining and boring. Ironically, for a guy who prides himself on quote-unquote critiquing DA users and laughing at them whenever they trace an image or use a base, Deviant Cringe's content is just as bad, if not much worse than the art he shows. How would I describe his channel and content? Okay, so remember the first looking at DeviantArt video SolarSense made that he improved upon and changed after long enough? Imagine if he never improved and decided to only ever be negative to the users he talked about. The way he'd look at a DA user would be he'd pull up the artist, scroll through the various art pieces, laugh at how terrible said art is, and then spend the rest of the video looking at comments, reading those comments, reading the tagline, just a bunch of reading the viewer could have done on their own had they decided to look at the piece. Sometimes the art featured isn't even that bad, it's just weird, and because it's weird, Deviant Cringe has to say it's weird, and because it's weird, it's bad, and terrible, and shit, and cringy, and he doesn't even make jokes, he just says it's bad. A word that could be applied to his own video quality. He keeps his mouse in frame instead of doing any editing whatsoever. The only representation he gives himself is an occasional changing sprite that mostly just sits there and, well, exists. It's like a reactor in the bottom right-hand corner of a screen. He barely changes emotions half the time, and most of the entertainment comes from looking at the media they're showing. He adds barely anything to what's being shown, and if you're asking me, he makes the experience of looking at the art even worse, since half the time he barely even knows what to say beyond, it's shit, because, well, it's bad, okay? Coinciding with that content, he made two other main kinds of video, cartoon news and cartoon reviews. That makes sense. He looks at art, so he probably likes animation. But is it any better than the you know how I'm gonna answer that question? It isn't. It's shockingly similar to his regular DeviantArt videos. If the cringe DeviantArt videos are like reactions, DC's reviews and cartoon news videos are like when reactors think they're talented enough to do something other than reacting, and it makes you want to smash your computer screen. I'd compare his reviews and news videos to Jinx unboxing videos for sure. He takes his time, talking at a slow pace and dragging out the runtime for ad revenue, making everyone who unfortunately thought it'd be a good idea to watch this video only cry even further for the pain to end. I tried, okay? I tried to watch all his cartoon reviews the entire way through, but I just couldn't. I was bored to tears by his voice. He never plays clips from the show other than in situations where he wouldn't have to. A majority of the video is just him on a Steven Universe background, talking with some blurring music that overlaps his voice sometimes. His greatest editing achievement is being able to place JPEGs on the screen sometimes. One reason I was bored had to do with his lack of structure. DC just goes through random bits about the show at random intervals. It can really be all over the place and feel like he didn't even try. I looked at his 5 or 6 reviews that spanned almost 2 years, and yet almost nothing changed the entire time. That kind of stagnation is something you only ever hear about rather than actually see, and you definitely get to see Deviant Cringe. His avatar's right there. You better like looking at it because there are sometimes full-minute intervals where it doesn't change. I find it quite a marvel he was able to get thousands of people to tune in for this. Oh wait, even his most popular cartoon reviews still get a small number of views in comparison to his previous flagship series, so I guess DC's own audience couldn't take it. The same can be said for his most recent endeavors in Reddit videos, which are pretty much the same as far as quality goes, so they're not really worth talking about. His cartoon news videos are my favorite because it reminds me of my good old pal Veilskibum's old content. In fact, I'd go as far as to say Deviant Cringe was sort of copying what Veil did in topics to gain more views, but then again, the cartoon news community has always mostly covered the same topics, so I could just be reading too much into it. Comparing the two, Veil's videos are shockingly much better. My thoughts on Veil are pretty clear. Most other people's thoughts on Veil are even clearer than I've ever made my own, but still, I wonder why Deviant Cringe wasn't talked about even more. On an objective level, Deviant Cringe made far worse videos to watch, but Veil tended to get the bulk of the criticism. I assume it was basically just because he was popular and had sort of a dumb voice, so in the eyes of the commentary community, he was the only crappy cartoon news channel who talked too often about Teen Titans Go. Nothing can be said about this series that I haven't already said about his other series. Overused topics, underused editing, boring to watch, short, not worth your time. Despite it being on par, if not lower than his average content though, Deviant Cringe decided to hammer the final nails in his channel's grave by ending his cartoon reviewing, Reddit browsing, and DeviantArt cringing series almost entirely 4 months ago to focus on news. The difference now being he wouldn't just talk about cartoons, he'd talk about everything considered geeky, like superheroes, video games, that kind of thing. He still occasionally reviews his own fans' art, art, and I saw one call-out video, but his channel is about news now. That's the main focus. Nowadays, Deviant Cringe barely makes videos relating to DeviantArt in any fashion. Really makes you wonder why he didn't just up and change his name already, since he doesn't really do anything related to the website anymore. I guess he just needs the brand recognition so people even know who he is. With no direction as to where he should go in the future, Deviant Cringe just continues to make news videos every other day that make little to no views, with most of the traffic he gets coming from videos he doesn't create anymore. This video isn't just to look at a bad user who rose to over 100k subs creating one bad archetype of content, it is a reminder to always try if you ever want to stay a success story on YouTube. Evolution is key to sticking around this platform. Keeping the same, by the numbers, basic content you've always made will lead to you surely fading into obscurity. It will happen whether you like it or not if you never change. Writing a popular topic for too long is another label you can throw on Deviant Cringe. During the 2016 to 2017 range, there were plenty of rants on DA users making shitty art. It was the culture of the time for commentary channels to always make that one video denouncing horrific OCs. Deviant Cringe as a channel now serves the same kind of example a montage clip channel does. Writing a topic to its highest cultural peak can get you places, but by the time that topic finally subsides, you'll be labeled as nothing but a one-trick pony who was only able to do one thing. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a fate worse than termination. To stay around as an empty husk, respected by few to none, rightfully ridiculed by others, content with them slowly fading into dust. I feel pity for Deviant Cringe, and if you do too, but want to be a YouTuber, don't do as he did. Use him as a textbook guide on how you shouldn't run a channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.